And I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time. I think it's going to be a real treat because when you're a broadcaster and you get to speak to a fellow broadcaster, there's nothing else in the world like it. Somebody that you've looked up to. So we're going to do that in just a moment. I do want to say real quick that this show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com. Don't forget to go to www.getthetea.com and gear up, grab your tea, get defended. You know the drill, right? AncientLifeOil.com as well. Also, preparewiththefriends.com. Thank you all so much for the donations, too, and all of your support. I really, really do appreciate everything you guys do for the show. You have no idea. We got through last month really good, and the audience has grown quite a bit as well. I'm just going to want to go right into this because we're about to talk to a guy that's talked to so many people about the subjects that we talk to about on this show. It's unbelievable. I mean, he's talked to everybody that I can think of that I want to talk to and more. And every time I think of a name, I'm like, okay, has he talked to him? He's talked to everybody. All right. And so if you don't know who Jeffrey Mishlove is, I'll tell you. Jeffrey Mishlove, or also known as Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, is the author of Roots of Consciousness, Psi Development Systems, and the PK Man. He is the recipient of the only doctoral diploma in parapsychology ever awarded anywhere in the world by an accredited university at the University of California, Berkeley in 1980. And between 1986 and 2002, he hosted and co-produced the original Thinking Aloud public television series. And he is also a past president of the nonprofit Intuition Network, an organization dedicated to creating a world in which all people are encouraged to cultivate and apply their inner intuitive abilities. He currently hosts the new Thinking Aloud channel on YouTube. Also, the website is the new thinkingaloud.com. Mr. Mishlove, thank you so much for coming on the program. This is a really special treat for me.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Joe.
Yeah, I had to reschedule last time. I got really sick, and it killed me because I was like, that's the show I was looking forward to big time.
Well, here we are.
Yeah, right. Here we are. So I don't get nervous before shows, but I'm a bit nervous today. So when it comes to this field of parapsychology and consciousness and spirit science, I am curious about some of your thoughts on these things because you've literally talked to just about everybody in this field. I mean, is there anybody that you would really want to talk to that you haven't got to talk to yet?
Oh, I've talked to maybe over 1,000 people in interviews. I started doing interviews in 1972, but I think I probably only spoken to a tiny fraction of all the interesting people. I'm learning new things every day, so I think of myself as a student and a seeker, really just like you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you're kind of a teacher too, and that's the thing is that I learned from you was one of the things before I got into broadcasting or doing this, right, was maybe sometimes we can just learn a lot of things by asking the right questions, right? Instead of, I mean, it's great to learn from all the people that you learn from, but if you find that you ask the right questions, it seems like no matter what expert you talk to, no matter who it is, we're all trying to figure out the same stuff, right?
I would agree with you. People who learn how to ask questions. I think my career as an interviewer, it might have started when I was a bellman at Schwartz's Resort in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. I was a teenager at the time. But I noticed there was another bellman who just seemed so popular. Everybody wanted to be around him. And I began watching, what is he doing that's working so well? And I realized he asks people questions. He shows a real interest in other people and asks them to talk about themselves, and people love that.
Right. Yeah, they do. And you don't get this too often, though, right? Do you get to be the guy? I mean, how many times? I haven't found you on a lot of radio shows.
No, that's true. I'm not like out there promoting myself as a guest on other programs. I do mostly. I'm the guy asking the questions.
Right. So, what about the degree in parapsychology? I think that is so cool. And from my understanding, it was you that kind of designed this thing, right, to get a degree in parapsychology. Or am I wrong about that?
Yes. No, that's correct. I was a graduate student in criminology in Berkeley. In fact, I was doing field work in San Quentin Prison in the psychiatric unit, conducting group therapy sessions with murderers and rapists.
Oh.
And I decided that I do really enjoy the whole field of deviant psychology, but I wanted to focus on positive forms of human deviance rather than negative. And I struggled, for months and months with that. And actually, I was guided by a dream to eventually enter into this individual interdisciplinary doctoral major that I created in parapsychology. I couldn't have done it on my own, but this dream sort of led me into the work I still doing, interviewing people on, at that time it was Pacifica Radio in Berkeley, and I found myself all of a sudden connected to the leaders in the field, and that gave me the confidence then to create a unique doctoral major in Berkeley.
That's so cool. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I'm just getting my selfish questions from my audience out of the way here, for all the people out there that are trying to do this, they're trying to be a podcast or do a YouTube channel, and they're trying to cultivate something, right? Do you have any advice for those people, like about what it takes to get to where you are?
Well, I don't know that I'm in such an enviable place. I'm working hard at it, and for me, it's really a work of love. It's certainly not for the money, because the money isn't there. But if you love what you're doing, on one occasion I interviewed Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, and I asked him a similar question. I said, what advice would you give to the young people out there? And he said, follow your passion. And I think I have to give the same advice.
Yeah, I totally
If you're
agree.
passionate about what you're doing, then you'll find a way to become a successful person.
Yeah, it's kind of like persistence. When you find it, you just stay with it and be persistent and keep going, and things just start happening. Mm-hmm. I totally agree. It is a tough subject, though, to talk about parapsychology, especially when it comes to the things like Carl Jung and doing the work of just trying to work through our unconsciousness, right? Once we realize, this all-seeing eye that most of the conspiracies are about, it's really just our unconscious and that whole realm and what's controlling our minds. And once we learn to get, and I have this issue, Jeffrey, where I feel like when I talk about it, I feel like I'm putting off a negative vibe, but I'm just trying to explain to people that we need to look at our unconscious actions before we step into the realm of knowing things, right, about what's going on, because we hurt each other. Like most of the suffering in the world is caused from a lack of love and a lack of an awareness of our unconscious actions, I believe.
Well, that's why they're unconscious. I suppose it's almost by definition. If they're unconscious, we're not aware of them. And of course, the unconscious is almost infinite. It's like peeling the layer of an onion. There's always a new layer after you get through one. But you're right. That's the goal. That's why we're here on this planet. Ultimately, is to become aware.
Do you really believe in the methods of Carl Jung, the dream work that you could really go through? Do you participate in that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I am a psychotherapist, or I have practiced psychotherapy. I no longer do, but I did for many years and was licensed to do that when I lived in the state of California. So I'm a big believer in what we call inner work, working on yourself, always trying to improve yourself. And dream work is very important because, as I mentioned a moment ago, the unconscious is by definition outside of awareness, but it leaks into awareness, and dreams is definitely one of the ways that the unconscious expresses itself.
Yeah, and we talk about that quite a bit on this show. I used to think the out of body experience, dreaming, all of it. I thought they were separate things. I thought, okay, well, dreaming is dreaming, lucid dreaming is lucid dreaming, and the out of body experience is something totally different. Now, I have different experiences with all of them, but I'm kind of wondering and learning that they're all the same thing, right? What are your thoughts on that? It's just all the same thing.
Well, they're all manifestations of mind or mental activity or the psyche or the soul. That's for sure. You could even take it a step further, as my friend Ray Hernandez in Florida does. He set up the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for understanding contact with non-human intelligence, and he maintains that even things like near-death experience and contact with alien beings, UFO abductions, and UFO kinds of contacts, or they prefer the word unidentified aerial objects, unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, to UFO, but he would say that it's all part of the same spectrum, even things like seances with the dead.
Right. Well, and demons even, you think, right? Demons, when people say, oh, it's a demon or it's a possession, I wonder about that too. I think that I've gotten mixed messages about that, to be honest with you. Some people said, well, no, they're separate entities, or no, they're just parts of yourself. I think it's a paradox sometimes.
Well, I think it's a paradox too, because when you're dealing in you could call it the super-sensible realm or the non-physical realm, the realm of the unconscious, it's not like dealing in the physical world where there are very clear boundaries between one object and another. Everything has a frame or a membrane around it, so you see separate things. But you could call it the spirit world, if you were. We don't get to see that. I mean, I suppose some gifted clairvoyants describe it as if they're really seeing it physically, but I think when you question them, they have their doubts as to how to interpret their experiences.
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with you. See, that's so honest, because I think everybody that does this work has doubts about certain things, and when you can admit your doubt in any belief system or any practice that you're doing, I think that's a good thing. We all feel like we need direction and we need to be taught something. And I feel that way too on the inside. I feel like there's this ultimate mystery that I need a little bit of guidance with. And so we constantly look for systems or methods that other people have used and great teachers and masters, and we need to be taught this stuff. And the weird thing is every time I go down that road, it's kind of like I feel like I'm getting closer, but I can't define it, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's a never-ending journey.
Yeah, that's all there is to it, right? It is never-ending journey.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on tarot? Do you use things like that, divination stuff?
I have in the past. I've certainly, when I first developed an interest in the paranormal and the occult, I studied astrology, tarot cards, the I Ching. I was quite interested in divination and have worked with the tarot cards in the past. But I think with all systems of divination, at least this is true for me personally, I think everybody might find that their own inner callings are different, but I found that for myself the importance of the oracle is not to go too often to the oracle, but to do it when you really need it, when you're really serious about it. If it can get overused and then it gets trivialized and becomes worthless.
Yeah. I actually talked about, that's funny you say that. I talked about that last night, where I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes because one question goes to another question and you're like, okay, I need to take a break, right? So I need to get away from this for a minute and just kind of be and feel. And I'm curious about what your thoughts are on energetic balance. Well, just balance as a whole, because I've looked at a lot of studies into that and talked to a lot of people about that, and even if it's Freemasonry or if it's any of the Eastern schools or if it's just plain old consciousness work. It seems like when it comes to energy, though, that we need to learn how to balance it. And that's where we get our peak energy. We get peak healing that way. We get peak awareness. And there's so many things in our life that are trying to throw us off balance. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, we live in a culture that is completely out of balance. We live on a planet, for example, where half of the people are overweight and half the people are malnourished. So that is an example of a planet or a human civilization that is out of balance. We, I think, emphasize, you mentioned Carl Jung earlier with his 4 psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. And we live in a culture in the Western world where thinking and sensation are very highly valued, but intuition and feeling tend to get downplayed in our culture. So we're out of balance in that way as well. And it's leading to, in my opinion, many of the social problems that you hear about on the news every day.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about the news either. I turn it on and I'm like, yes, I know there are bad things happening out there. But the weird thing is when I turn it off, I feel like I'm not, sympathetic to it. And so there's all this stuff being thrown at us on the internet, on TV, and it's just it feels like a constant judgment going on. And I think because of that, that's why a lot of people revert to podcasts or shows like yours, where they just want to sit and listen to people talk and say it's okay to have permission to think about these things or to be a certain way,
Well, it's true that so much of the, especially the cable news programs, seem to be designed to work up a feeling of outrage. Every time I turn on the news, something outrageous seems to be happening. And whether you watch the right-wing or the left-wing news channel, it's always, they're harping about something to get outraged about.
Yeah. Yeah,
so it's exactly as if they're feeding on that emotion, and I suppose some people, they get addicted to feeling outraged, and so it's probably good for ratings, but I don't think it's good for our culture.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that too as well. If you guys go to the website thinkingaloud.com or newthinkingaloud.com, you can see all of the subjects that you've talked about on here. Man, there's a lot of stuff. And that's why I praise you so much, because of your persistence, how long you've been doing it, all the conversations you've had, literally every subject that anybody wants to know about when it comes to this stuff, you've talked about it. What do you think are the most important things? Like, what would you say was the one thing that you have found that, this is a tough question for me to ask, that we need to focus on more above other things, in your opinion?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Let me take a moment to think about it,
because
it's easy to give you a glib answer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because where we are as a society right now, I think we're in a very delicate spot. Like, the decisions we're about to make and this is just what I think, can go one way or the other. And you've talked about everything from A to Z, from addiction to magic to martial arts and spiritual teachers and Sufism and death and dying. And I say death and dying, to me, I think that is the trigger for most of all of our unconscious actions is love and fear and death and dying. I think if you go deep inside the unconscious, that's where everything spawns from, is fear.
Well, those are 4 big ones: love and fear and death and dying. Yes, indeed. I think, for certain age groups, the focus on death and dying is more paramount. I'm, for example, one of the very early baby boomers. I was born in 1946, so I'm going to be 73 this year. And I realize that for my generation, we're getting ready to die. In fact, any number of my friends have died in the last 5-10 years. So, George Harrison, the Beatles once proclaimed that his goal in life was to die consciously.
Right.
And I think that's a very good goal to have. I'm kind of working on that myself, but for people in a different phase of their life, it's probably more important to live consciously than to die consciously.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. So I think you kind of answered the question for me. I'm looking at that too. Like I'm looking at the systems of that, to be conscious after you pass away. And from my understanding, and maybe you can give me your thoughts on this too. My understanding is that we're in kind of this slumber, and old school, like traditional Hermetic alchemy is really all about, we think it's about gold and metal, and it is about awareness and things like that. But there's like this secret side of it that talks about transmuting your energetic body, through the fires of your body into a being where you no longer lose your consciousness, which I think is the second death that they describe in the Bible. You die in the body, and then you have this conscious, or what they call a lunar body. And instead of losing your identity, you don't do that anymore, and we don't forget who we are, so to speak. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you put it very articulately. I don't claim to have any special knowledge about those things. I guess I have my own intuitions, but I think you put it quite beautifully. And the whole Hermetic tradition, alchemy, Gnosticism, not to mention the Eastern yoga and meditative traditions, they all point in that direction.
Exactly, right. And I look at suffering and say, okay, if I can see somebody's where they're suffering, because you brought this up earlier with the parapsychology thing, or I can see somebody's deviance or where they're suffering, then I can also see where they lack or where they need love. And we get thrown onto this planet like babies, like it almost feels like a beached whale or something. Like we just don't know what's going on, why we're here. And then everybody's teaching us this stuff, and we're taught not to ask the big questions, because nobody's got the answers. That's why nobody wants to answer it for you. And it's scary,
Well, I think part of it is the economy, to be honest. People get caught up in raising a family and needing to meet their mortgage payments and their monthly bills, and then you've got the employers who want their employees to stay on the job and be stable. And when people start asking the big questions, if they're serious about it, they're likely to go off on a quest and, sort of drop out of the economy in a way and pursue, their own inner growth or their spiritual quest at the expense of conventional values like earning a living.
Right. Yeah, you know what? You just told my story. That's funny. Mm. So you've seen that a lot, right? You see that's what happens. Oh,
I'm very fortunate as a person who was able to go on a quest and sort of maintain a career at the same time. It's not an easy balancing act.
No, it definitely isn't. Do you think it's possible that we can ever change that on this planet? And I know a lot of what you're saying is intuitive, but that's why I want to talk to you about your intuitive stuff.
Sure. Well, if you look at human history, you can see it wasn't always this way. There were, since the Renaissance for the last 500 years or so, we've had a very materialistic culture that elevates the idea of rational thought above every other human faculty. But there was a time in the Middle Ages where all the economic, artistic, musical activity, philosophical activity was devoted towards the church and religion and the idea that there is an eternal reality and that we're just passing through a vale of tears on our way to something much greater.
Yeah, and then we lost sight of that somewhere. And
Well, the church became abusive in different ways. There was a big schism in the Catholic Church, for example, and free thinkers began to feel that the orthodoxies of religion were too constraining at the time. So we went through a phase, they call it the Enlightenment, but it was not the same kind of an enlightenment that when you hear the term mentioned in the context of yoga or Buddhism, when they use the word enlightenment, they mean something very different.
Yeah. Yes, they do. I'm looking at that right now, at the Enlightenment on your website. There is literally, I don't know, there are so many subjects on here. Like, you talk about some subjects that people are afraid of, that I'm afraid to talk about, but are important, I think. I've tried to on the show, things like, sexuality. That's an important thing to talk about. That's where a lot of our unconscious stuff comes from, I would say. Initiation. Sure. Every time I try to talk about initiation, I have the hardest time explaining it. And, existentialism and addiction. Addiction is one that gets everybody's attention. I know that because there's so many people addicted to stuff. I've had my own experiences with it. But I think it is one of the worst things that's going on right now, and we're not paying enough attention to it when it comes to loving folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in the middle of a opioid epidemic.
Yeah, right. It's bad. And until we experience something, we don't know the truth about it. We've got all these judgments until we actually have the experience. And then all of a sudden our paradigm changes, which is another subject you talk about. And you guys can tell that I'm flustered. I'm just hitting Dr. Mishlove here with one question after the other. But you know me, right? When we come back from break, I'm going to ask him about maybe some of his experiences, no matter how small or big. We'll be right back with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. You guys don't go anywhere.
Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
AncientLifeOil.com. For your CBD needs, just remember, AncientLifeOil.com. What does it do for the body, you ask? I can't say to the people in the suits that run the industry. Big Pharma's all over CBD because of its well, you know what I mean. Research the benefits of CBD on Google and come back to AncientLifeOil.com and purchase your CBD today. Non-GMO and all organic. You don't want to be using a petroleum product. You want to be using the cleanest CBD product on the market. AncientLifeOil.com. We even have CBD for your pet. Help your pet's discomfort. Help your discomfort. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Newly reduced prices to pass off the savings to the most important person. You. AncientLifeOil.com. And one more thing, we have topicals too. So if you have joint pain and some different issues that are going on in your body, you might want to use a topical. Think about it. AncientLifeOil.com.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM. And visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to the Fringe FM.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Tonight we're here with the one and only Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. If you can't tell, it's kind of a big deal to me because as a fellow broadcaster, you look upon people that you feel, or I feel, have changed things in this community in a big way. One of them, for me, obviously, is Art Bell. Another one I look at is Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, and he's here with us tonight. And it's not brought up the fact I asked you during the break. I was like, hey, let's talk about your books, and you wrote these books quite a long time ago. Have you ever thought about taking up writing again?
Well, I'm putting out 3 videos a week, and it pretty much takes up all of my emotional and creative energy, so more likely I'll just keep doing more videos at this point. You never know, I suppose.
Yeah, why break it, right? I get it. Mm-hmm. I got a text in here, and this is a question, it looks like from a 512 area code, and it says, does Jeffrey Mishlove have any opinion about the reason for all the mass shootings? That's a good question. It does seem like every time we turn around, that it's a negative topic, I know, but it's present, and it's really bothersome. And I don't know. Some people say it's the media, it's conspiracy, or there's really some strife going on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is a very deep question, and the best answer I can think of right now comes from a sociologist who was a big inspiration to me. His name was Piram Sorokin. He died, I think, in 1969. But he talked about the social cohesion and how society goes through different phases. Like we talked about in the last segment, how in the Middle Ages it was a very spiritual time for people with all the work focused focusing on, cathedrals and
right.
religion. And then since the Renaissance, the culture has become much more materialistic. But I think what happens is a very materialistic culture is not capable of really encompassing all of reality, because as you pointed out, there's the psyche to be considered, the soul. And so materialism is breaking down, which means that the metaphysical glue holding our culture together is breaking down. And when that happens, when people are sort of lost, metaphysically speaking, then you get, according to Sorokin, a lot of social alienation. The normal bonds that hold people together and keep society civil start breaking down. Social agreements start breaking down. Why, you might even get a president who is accused by a major newspaper of having told 12,000 lies, for example. It's a general breakdown of the social order.
It is, and it does bother me, honestly, when I turn on the TV and I see that. I mean, it's like, man, another one. There's another one and another one, and it's, we have a problem with just understanding polarity. Just that concept of polarity and what it does to us. And, it's almost, I don't want to be hypocritical because I understand, right? Like when we get into conflicts and arguments, we forget that there's another person there. We get entirely self-focused. We get focused on our own pain. And it's hard to come out of that protective, angry state and talk to anybody when we're all just doing that, when we can't be in the moment. And I think the moment, just being aware of right now is one of the biggest things. Now, if we could all just I think they should teach that in school, Yeah,
the power of the here and now. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that never gets taught.
And we don't know how we hurt people sometimes, and we don't know what's going on with kids. I know my son last week, he said, there's a threat for shooting across Arkansas or something. Schools were just a threat. And I was like, well, what do I got to do? I got to leave my son at home. And this is, I'm not trying to get negative again. All right. So this is the paradox I feel that we're in and the reason why I want to talk to people like you, because you've talked about all of these subjects, and I feel like we're just so polarized when it even comes to spirituality and non-spirituality. It's like we got a whole group of people that are aware and awake, and we talk about all this stuff, and then it feels like when we turn on the news or something, it's a whole nother group of people sometimes.
Well, I think if you take a longer-term view, things might not seem quite so bad. After all, probably your father or grandfather lived through the Second World War, and before that there was the First World War, and enormous revolutions and famines and social dislocations of every kind. You might say, in fact, Steven Pinker, who is a well-known writer these days, has a new book out where he points out that actually the world is becoming less and less violent over time. That, for all the trouble that we have right now, we haven't had a world war now for quite a long time, in my lifetime. In fact, I was born after the Second World War. So yes, we've had conflicts, but nothing on that scale.
Yeah, you're right. That is actually a very positive way of looking at it, because that's true. We've gotten less violent over time.
It seems that way. I mean, there's always a risk that things could get a lot worse, and the potential for things to get a lot worse with nuclear weapons and climate change and so on, I think is quite high.
Yeah. So that speaks to me a bit loudly about what the media is doing to us, because I wouldn't have said that if I didn't feel like everything was about to end, right? If everything was so devastating. So you can see right there what the media has done to my mind. If I just backed up and took a bigger look at it, I'd see that, things have changed in good ways, and there are some bad things as well. Craven is asking.
I can tell you this: ever since the time of Jesus, people thought the world was about to end.
Yeah, that's right. We always do, don't we? We think it's coming.
It seems, yeah. And, there's always a market for negative prophecies, I think, of that sort. But nonetheless, there are very real risks humanity is facing now, greater risks than ever before, because of our own technology. We're the ones who are causing, for example, one of the largest mass extinctions of species ever to take place on this planet.
Yeah, man, that's so true. That is so true. Craven is asking in the Fringe FM chat, I'd love to hear Dr. Mishlove talk about how we utilize all these psi experiences to create meaning in our lives and improve our lives. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. So we use all of these experiences like dream work, all of these, when we see synchronicities, we think that, do you think that sometimes things just happen, or does everything happen for a reason? Like, how some people say, oh, there's no coincidences, or sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. And your experience, what do you think about that?
Yeah. There's some questions that you can't really answer very well. Are there coincidences or not? It is sort of subjective, but right. I will say that when it comes to psychic functioning, I think what interests me the most about psychic functioning is simply that it exists, that these things are possible, that we should have an open mind about what reality is and what is possible for ourselves. But in terms of living a better life, living a wiser life, for example, I think you don't need to focus on using psychic functioning for that purpose. Focus on what kind of a life you would like to have. And, get in touch with your deep desires, your values, your personal mythology. And if you're focused on becoming the very best version of yourself, then, whatever psychic manifestations occur, they will probably be in support of that very appropriate goal.
Right. Yeah. And from my experience, when it comes to things like synchronicities, the times that I'll say, well, is this a sign? Well, listen to it, like see what happens, follow it and listen to it. And it seems like every time I do that, even as skeptic as I am, every time I do that, it'll give me another sign to confirm it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, there you go. You're listening to something that's there. I'm curious though.
I think that's true, but I also think it doesn't happen mechanically, like my experience. Right. I mean, it's not like you can do the same little ritual each time and get the same result. You sort of have to stay in the here and now and maintain a kind of novel, fresh approach to it. Now, other people may disagree. I mean, everybody is unique in that sense. Some people will be long-term meditators, or they'll practice a particular ritual, every week for decades and decades. And for some people, that's not an appropriate way to go. I think it's very important for people to discover their own inner truth, because it'll be different for everybody.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different systems laid out for a lot of different people, and I think we're all attracted to a lot of different things when it comes to our spirituality. And I talked about this last night with Lady Ann, and this is it is okay. I know I'm asking a bunch of deep and hard questions, but I tend to get that way when I get around folks that I feel have, just like you, that have talked to so many people. I know that you've got some good intuitions about it. Or at least ones that I'd like to hear. And I wonder sometimes, because I study hermetics, right? And they have all these laws, like as above, so below, etc., as within, so without, macrocosm, microcosm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there are cosmic truths, though, that are just kind of for everybody?
Well, I was thinking about that earlier today. I was meditating on the idea of that there's a physical world and then there's a non-physical world, for example, that we live in two different worlds at once. And I began contemplating that, and it dawned on me, if you think about it mathematically, we know what the outer boundaries are of the physical world. For example, in physics, it's very clear. Quantum physics, there's the Planck length. Nothing is smaller than the Planck length physically, but mathematically, anybody can imagine you can take the Planck length and divide it by a zillion, and so you can get much smaller than that. But there's nothing physical going on at that when you're that small. So you can define mathematically, how small you have to be completely outside the physical universe as we know it.
Wow. Yeah, see, I did not know that. That's pretty cool. So you've looked into that and like fractals. That's some interesting stuff, really. Because it's like there lies fractal sacred geometry. Everybody's seen that picture of the human mind, and then they show the picture of the universe, and it kind of looks the same. And I start noticing things like that, and this is just in my mind, but when we were talking about alchemy and stuff like that, they talk about traveling the stars. Your body no longer is stuck on dense planets, and you'll be able to travel through star systems with your consciousness. And then now on this earth, which is a smaller form here, which is like Malkuth to the Kabbalists, but on the smaller form of this, we have maybe a small representation of something like that, like maybe fiber optic cable, where we're sending data through light, because to me, it's like we figured out a fundamental principle. And I think sometimes I wonder, actually, when we think something is new, that it's really just us discovering something that's already been there the whole time, or you know what I mean? It's the truth.
Well, I think when it comes to truth and philosophy, you find that it's hard to come up with new ideas that the ancient Greeks and Persians weren't already talking about.
Right.
But when it comes to technology, there's all sorts of new stuff coming down all the time that's changing our lives dramatically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I knew I want to ask you, here's one. Transhumanism, right? The idea that we're going to hook up to these machines, they're going to make us smarter. What is it, Neuralink? I think that's what it's called, where we can just hook up to something and be like Google and be smarter. Does that stuff worry you at all? It worries me just a little.
I don't know that I'm worried about it. I'm not particularly optimistic or into it at all. I think most of the people I know who consider themselves transhumanists are also materialists. They think that as soon as computers are as complex as the human brain, then you can just upload your consciousness onto a computer and we'll all become cyborgs or something like that. I think that's very naive thinking. It shows very little understanding of consciousness.
Yeah, I do too, because they can't locate it. They don't know where it is. So I don't know how it's just like they're starting with data. And when we start hooking ourselves up to machines, I do feel like, I understand if you're getting sick and you need help, but to enhance the human ability, so we can have Google on our mind, we're already kind of cyborgs holding these phones, right? So, I mean, yeah, it does. Well,
that seems to be humans are evolving into a kind of cyborg. I think that's what all of the skin piercing is about, and some people are implanting computer chips. And I have a pacemaker that controls my heartbeat, for example.
Oh, wow.
So I do think that, the process of evolution is taking place right under our noses, and we're contributing to it.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we definitely are. And I also think that the internet, which you broadcast on and I do too, is a way for us to expand our awareness through communication. Like, I've got friends, I have now more friends than I ever thought I would have in the internet world. In the real world, I've got 5 or 6 really good close friends. But in the internet world, like you, I've met so many people I never thought I would meet, both famous and nobody knows who they are, kind of, and they're fantastic people. And I feel like that is consciousness using technology because we have the will to come together. But when it works the other way around, it does seem a little scary, you know?
Well, I think that the internet is like an extension of the human nervous system in a way. It's electromagnetic. It extends around the planet. We're kind of creating a global brain. We're building it with fiber optic cables and wires and computer chips, and it's like an organic process that's taking place. And at some point, it will take on a life of its own. Yeah,
it sure will. And, I didn't, that's, I hope the pacemakers, that's good. I'm glad. I hope you're feeling good. You're okay, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So I got to ask, have you ever had like a legitimate out of body experience? The kind that William Buhlman talks about and Robert Monroe. Have you had this type of experience?
I would have to say no. The closest I probably have come is in lucid dreaming, flying in lucid dreaming, which is a wonderful experience. But some of the really strong out-of-body experiences that are reported, for example, there was a psychic who worked at the American Society for Psychical Research in New York for many years named Alex Tanis, and he had the ability to project out of the body at will. And there is one occasion in which he reported he was in this dream and he visited a friend of his in Canada in the dream, and at the same time the friend in Canada reported in his own diaries that at like early in the morning, in the middle of the night, there was a knock on the door, and he opens the door, and there is this Dr. Tanis is there, who apologizes for interrupting him so late at night, and he invites him in, and they have tea together, and his wife upstairs in the bedroom hears the conversation, and then after a while, Dr. Tanis apologizes and leaves, and this Canadian waits because it was winter and he wanted to make sure that Tanis could drive away okay because it was snowing, and he goes outside to double check, and there's no footprints, there's no Tanis, there's no sign of a car or anything, and so he records all of this, writes it down, and Tanis in New York is reporting his dream, and they're both reports are sent simultaneously to the American Society for Psychical Research. Dr. Carlos Osis was head of research there, and he verified, he got affidavits from these people that this really happened exactly as they said. So, you know, you can take, it's just a short jump from an out-of-body experience to what you would call bilocation, where people can see you and interact with you as if you're a physical being at the other location.
Yeah, that is incredible, right? Isn't it? I mean, again,
it's very rare for bilocation to be reported under good conditions like that, but I suspect it occurs more often than we realize.
Like we just, maybe we do things a lot that we don't remember too. That was something that Robert Bruce brought to my attention, because you hear people say, you know, I don't dream. When I go to sleep, I fall out and I'm unconscious and I don't dream at all. And yet those people, if you're ever around them when they're sleeping, you'll hear them talking in their sleep and stuff. And so a lot of this stuff has to do with remembering, I think, or trying to figure out methods to stay conscious when we're in certain states.
People can get better at this with practice by keeping a dream journal, for example.
Yeah, I imagine you're kind of like me, though. Like before I started, I was fascinated with the subject. I had my own experience with it. And then when I got really deep into, you know, broadcasting every night and trying to keep up with the information of all the guests I was having on, you know, I go unconscious. So I understand, right? I fall out. And I think that it's probably important that we all take a little time to do that type of stuff. And so I'm wondering, your interest in all of these subjects, was it simply a curiosity or an experience that led you to ask these questions?
Well, as I mentioned in our first segment, I felt like I was guided by dreams.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, I had one dream that led me to develop a career as a broadcaster. I had another dream in which a great uncle of mine appeared and talked to me deeply about my life, and I woke up from the dream and I was singing and crying at the same time, which I've only done that one time in my whole life. And it was as if that experience was so powerful. It was more real than real. And then I wrote home and said, "How's Uncle Harry? I had a dream about him." And next thing I know, my mother's on the phone saying, "How did you know Uncle Harry just died?"
Oh.
And so, it was experiences like that provoked me to make a decision at some point that understanding what's going on here was important enough that I might want to just devote my whole life to it. And
that's what you did.
Basically, That's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always wondered that when I would watch your shows on YouTube and stuff. You always had really good questions, and I think, what experiences has he had? So the dream stuff is important for sure. I've got journals galore here, and sometimes I'll forget something, and I'll go, "What was that? I've had this experience before," or something lines up, and then you go back in the journal. Because if you don't journal it, then you're back into the unconscious issue again,
You could forget all about it,
Yeah, you forget totally about it. I think with the internet now, I wonder if you feel if we do now have the tools to grow the way we want to when it comes to awareness. I used to ask everybody this question, do you feel like more people are coming to aware of this stuff? And everybody'd say, "Oh yeah." But again, back to our earlier discussion, the more I look at things like the news, and then I go back to the internet, I talk to people like Klaas Vaughn who tell me that, this UFO thing where we're about to have disclosure, this is just what he called a cycle. This has happened before. And that was kind of discouraging. But you have talked to way more people than me. Do you think that we are actually waking up as a society? And it's okay if it's, you say no.
Joe, in the 1970s, when I first started as a broadcaster and when I entered into my doctoral major at Berkeley in parapsychology, I was convinced that we're on the verge of a revolution of the mind, that there was research being reported virtually every week on dream telepathy and the consciousness in plants and many other things, remote viewing, and the military got involved, and I thought, this is going to be revolutionary, but it turned out not to be. That is not that it wasn't real and that it didn't have revolutionary potential. All that is true, but it's so deep and profound that it takes a long time for society to be able to absorb it, to integrate it. And so I think we've got to be patient, that it could take generations. It might be 100 years. It might be 1,000 years. I don't know. If we might not make it at all. We might destroy ourselves before we can truly wake up, or some combination of these things. There could be huge disasters that are going to be required before we wake up. I don't have all of the answers, but right. I do think. I no longer believe it's going to happen overnight or even in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you I totally agree on that. I am getting a lot of intuitive responses that I feel too, and that's kind of validating, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay. Some people, I guess the way to put it is, some people wake up. Like you said, it's a personal journey. They decide to go on this journey, and then others, maybe they don't. But that's part of it, right? Maybe it is in Ecclesiastes, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. but we're still on our own journey. We'll be right back with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. Stay with us.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheTea.com.
This is Reverend John M. Polk, and you are listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting right here on the Fringe.fm.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Malduquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts. We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling, the ground shook, you could hear rushing water, and then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves stripped bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Alright everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussel, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you be the Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
Pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Yeah, it's a really special night here for Lighting the Void because we're getting to speak with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. I do want to thank also, quick shout out to Walt Thornhill for coming on last night and talking about the Electric Universe. That archive is going to go up. You guys always keep in mind that after running the radio station, producing shows, and doing my own show, sometimes I get a day or two behind on the archives, but they always go up there on every podcast player and on YouTube as well. And so you'll always have those archives for later listening. I'm very glad that you're willing to ask these super deep questions with me, Jeffrey, because they mean the world to me and my listeners. We don't have like a humongous audience, but I know my people, and they are some deep folks. And we really talk a lot about magic, dream work like you talk about, and the out-of-body experience quite a bit. We do talk about paranormal and ufology, but mainly it's all about consciousness exploration. And I feel like that is our ultimate weapon. If we worry about, as you were stating before, the end of the world and technology and all this stuff. But I think once we become better explorers of consciousness, like William Buellman said, we can really start tapping into some true power here that not only changes our lives, but the lives around us. And hopefully one day, no matter how long it takes, the planet,
I would agree.
Consciousness exploration is I think is the key to everything when it comes to the paranormal and everything we talk about. So when people talk about Bigfoot, Dogman, UFOs, every time you look at this stuff, you do find something that seems to be phasing with consciousness. Even Whitley Strieber was talking about his communion stuff when he was on the show and said, I don't know if these beings are from another planet. I'm pretty sure they are, but I think it might have had something to do with the fact that I was just in a different frequency or on a different wavelength. Right?
Well, the idea of self-knowledge goes back to the founders of philosophy, to Socrates, and even to the pre-Socratic philosophers who said, know thyself. And it's good advice. And I think when they were thinking this over 2,000 years ago, they were thinking about it in a mystical sense, like what is the self? What is this point of awareness? How is it that we happen to be here and are not only here, but we're conscious of the fact that we're here? How did that arise?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is the deepest, that is one of the deepest questions. And, I look at my cat every day because a lot of the people who listen to the show, I don't deny it. They're cat people, right? And everybody says, well, you can talk to the cat. The cats go to heaven. Well, from my experience, the way that cat acts, I'm not so sure about that. But I do know that it's conscious. I know that it's aware. And I know that I have more consciousness maybe. But I feel like I get this feeling that we're here to, like we're being tested, or we're here to learn a lesson. And maybe that's just me. When you hear people say that, like we're all here to learn lessons and learn higher things so we can move on to become bigger and better beings, does that feel true to you as well?
Well, yes and no. I think we have to be a little bit careful about, what is better and what is worse, what is bigger and smaller. For example, I was thinking today about jellyfish, and I imagine the jellyfish are conscious, sort of the way your cat is, but they're so different from us. I have almost no concept at all what it would be like to be a jellyfish, and for all I know, jellyfish are in higher states of consciousness than humans ever get to.
Yeah. And dolphins too, right? Yeah.
Right. Dolphins are very interesting. At least they like to interact with humans. And I think humans and dolphins have a long history together that humans and jellyfish don't particularly have. Maybe dolphins could tell us more about the jellyfish.
Yeah. It's like an alien world there.
Mm-hmm.
I get kind of amazed by what we don't know. And that's why I think asking the right questions are super important, or just asking questions, like ask why. And then when somebody gives you an answer, don't stop there. Ask why again, even if it gets uncomfortable, try to figure it out. If you had to pick a few, like a guest that you think is probably about to really move us into the next generation of consciousness exploration, would it be someone like Dean Radin, that where he wrote that book, Magic is Real, or Real Magic, and how they are doing science experiments with what we used to be afraid of? We used to call it the occult and evil and the devil, and now they're treating it in certain places as a science. Do you feel like that is a super important thing to talk about with guests like that nowadays?
I think Dean Radin is doing really important work. He's an excellent example of a very open-minded researcher, and there's just so many good people doing good work. I hope that the word gets out. That's why I think your program is very important. That no one of us can do it alone, considering there's some 7 billion people on the planet. Everyone needs to be reached a little differently, and there are thousands of wonderful researchers and writers and teachers and mystics, psychics of every kind who deserve more of a platform, because our culture, by and large, doesn't give it to them.
Yeah, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Even though I try to do that. I try to help with the Fringe FM, that people that want to do shows and podcasts, and try to help them have a voice. But I think sometimes I'm learning sometimes people just want to stay to themselves, and they just want to talk about it and escape a little bit, just to get away from the hustle and bustle of what, the economy, like you were talking about. And I don't want to push people into being bigger explorers of consciousness if they don't want to. I just think, man, if we really want to change the planet and change and ease the suffering, so to speak, and live happier, loving lives, sometimes I feel like maybe we should push it a little more, even though some people don't want to hear it.
Well, I think there are gentle ways of kind of inviting people to consider that they might open up or change their attitude in one or two ways. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a question of giving people a tiny little nudge rather than trying to hit them over the head with a 2x4.
Yeah. I do that too bad sometimes. I'm like, why don't you ask these questions? Why do you not care? And sometimes it's not that they don't care. Maybe they just weren't aware of it at the time until you said something. I'm getting a text in here about what your experience is with the paranormal. Do you have any experiences when it comes to poltergeist or hauntings or any type of thing like that? People just want to know.
I wrote this book called The PK Man, and it's the result of a 10-year study I did with Ted Owens is his name. I met him in 1976 and worked with him until he died in 1987. And he claimed to be the representative on Earth of invisible beings from other dimensions he called the space intelligences, who had given him powers that were greater than any other human had had since the days of Moses. And he was eager to work with scientists, and he produced demonstrations of these abilities, and I worked with him, recorded dozens of such demonstrations, and I have in my files to this day over 160 demonstrations of psychokinesis at large scale, like controlling hurricanes, tornadoes, hot spells, cold spells, droughts, power blackouts, and UFO sightings. So I, had a lot of experience observing these things. He would send me written letters in advance telling me what it was that he planned to do or that the space intelligences wanted him to do, and then that would be followed by newspaper clippings of all these large-scale events, things that you would not anticipate happening more or less the way he said they would.
Yeah.
It was very convincing, very, very dramatic.
Yeah, and then there's this thing that happens sometimes when, you know how they have these super skeptics like the amazing Randy or whatever that guy's name is, or Philip Glass, and there seems like there's always the skeptic that comes along and says, okay, well, if this is the case, then I'm going to try this. And they do this thing where they try to disprove everything, and it's almost like, well, I don't know if you're aware of this or if you've seen this, but it's almost like when you don't believe, or if somebody walks into the room and they're there, they have an emotional investment in showing you that this isn't real. Somehow or another, it don't work anymore. And I don't mean scientific experiments or things like that, but you know what I mean? Like it's almost like they put this new reality in there and said, see, it's all in your mind,
Well, I suspect that one of the reasons that happens is because it's sort of like a social pressure valve, that society is only capable of absorbing so much of this, and so it's an unconscious response from the group psyche to protect itself from opening up too quickly. On the other hand, when it came to Ted Owens, he got all kinds of feedback of a negative sort like that. Because, for example, he walked into he came to visit me in San Francisco, walked right into the headquarters of the main newspaper in San Francisco, the Chronicle Examiner, and said, here I am, the great PK man. And there was a drought that year. I think it was 78, if I remember correctly. And I'm going to end the drought. And they had police in the lobby, and they just booted him right out, right on his butt. And so he said to himself, well, I guess I'm going to have to teach you people a lesson. He said, instead of ending the drought, I think I'm going to cause forest fires all over the state of California. And within a few weeks, 300,000 acres had burned up, caused by lightning strikes, thousands of lightning strikes, which was also one of his specialties. He was known for being able to sort of point his finger at particular locations and concentrate, and a bolt of lightning would come out of the sky and strike where he was pointing.
Wow. That's incredible.
So, of course, the people who are skeptical are perfectly capable of ignoring all of that. They've already made up their minds. So, evidence doesn't matter.
So it does seem that plays a role. I think it does. I had a caller call in when we did open lines, Mr. Owl, and he talked about this experience where an orb came in to their field of vision, and he had all these friends, and he'd been trying to convince them this stuff is real. An orb came into their field of vision, and afterwards they kind of did some things like psychedelics that, messed with their mind. Obviously, that's what psychedelics do. They change your perception and stuff, which no judgment, but that wasn't the moral of the story. The moral of the story is he started noticing that sometimes beings or UFOs or orbs or paranormal experiences would always show up when there was a way to explain it away relatively realistically. And that's why it stays hidden so much, because it finds a way to show up in a way where a person will experience it in reality, and they had a real experience, but to the rest of the world, it will always look like it was just a coincidence. If you see what I'm saying.
Well, that's why parapsychologists do experiments. They try to set up controlled conditions so that the normal explanations that a skeptic might use could be ruled out. And there are hundreds of these experiments that have been published now since the late 1880s, since the early 1880s. The Society for Psychical Research was founded in 1882 in England. So the research in this field is vast at this point. But when it comes to daily life experiences and uncontrolled circumstances, you could always say, well, you were having a hallucination, or your memory is faulty, or you misunderstood what happened, or, any number of things. They're easy to explain away if that's your intention.
Yeah, that's what I find most frustrating about all of it, because I can't, and I know it may not be important to a lot of people, but I can't prove what has happened to me to anyone. But
what
I know it's
to
happened. You? Well, the out-of-body experience that I told you about, I've had a couple of those. I can't prove the synchronicities and the perfection of the synchronicities and symbolism using divination in those times I've used it in my life, like you talked about, when it matters, and how perfect everything just lined up. Or say when you get an omen and you get it over and over again, or a sign, and I'm not really talking about like 222 or 444. I'm not negating that, but I'm talking about bigger things. This certain, in my mind, animal always shows up at this spot when this thing happens. And it's beautiful, but in a way, when I go to talk about it or express it, it separates us from the norm, because it can be explained away. I find that frustrating sometimes.
Sure, totally understandable. And even for people who do hardcore laboratory research, it's very hard for them to get a hearing amongst other scientists. Many scientists simply feel like, well, if you got positive data, then you must have done something wrong. So I don't need to bother to pay any attention, because I already know in advance it can't happen. And the thing is, though, what really does persuade people isn't proof. Most of the time, people are not persuaded by proof.
Right.
Well, younger people maybe. The older generation has to die out. But what does persuade people are stories. And if you can tell your story in an emotionally authentic way, I think people will listen.
Wow. That has happened 3 times during the show. I was about to go there, and you already started. See, it's an experience I just had. You already started to talk about it. Your personal experience, I feel, is the big thing when it comes to finding out what you were calling earlier your individual truth, right? Your personal experience is everything.
If you tell it with emotional authenticity, I think people relate to it. And in my case, I can say quite honestly that my whole career has been guided by dreams.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I don't care whether, somebody believes me or not. It's the truth.
Yeah, so you've been doing this for quite some time. You probably got a stack of dream journals, huh? You ran out of paper, I bet.
Yeah. I probably have a couple, yeah.
You wrote the book, The Roots of Consciousness. I haven't read that book, honestly, and what are you trying to tell us in the book about the roots of consciousness? Is it about the genesis or the beginning of consciousness in us or as a society?
Well, it was published in 1975, and I was at the time working on my doctoral degree in parapsychology. It was not done as a dissertation. It was done, in effect, as the equivalent of a qualifying exam to prove to my professors that I had an overview of the whole field of parapsychology. So it has chapters on folklore and history and experimental science and theory. And I would say this about, what am I saying about the roots of consciousness? I had a mentor back then, Arthur M. Young, who I wrote about in the book. He invented the Bell helicopter, and he was an astrologer and a great metaphysician and a really interesting man who opened up the Institute for the Study of Consciousness in Berkeley and invited me to move in and live with him. And when he saw the book published, The Roots of Consciousness, he said to me, you know what? He says, your book should be called The Fruits of Consciousness rather than The Roots. He says, you're talking about the flowers of consciousness. He said, the roots are something else. They go deeper. The roots, you have to go into the mud to find the roots. Which really means digging into your unconscious, and actually, in the mud, you could say refers to you confronting your own dark side.
That's it. There it is. Yeah, I think that is huge. I think that's everything. To me, it is. It's everything to me in my life right now, and what I'm going through, if so to speak. And people that know me best know what I'm talking about, and I am extremely drawn to the Rosicrucian system, things like, and I'm talking about pre-Aleister Crowley, but like Golden Dawn and the earlier Rosicrucians, and this idea of not really perfecting yourself, but becoming aware of your own nature first and who you are before you get into this realm of exploration and energetic work. Now, I've been judged on that. I've been like Dean Radin kind of agreed with me on it. Then I've had magicians on here that said, well, that's old school stuff. That's old hat things. But if we're going to be doing or trying to get involved with some really powerful stuff and deep inside the conscious, shouldn't, in your mind, and I'm curious what your thoughts on it, shouldn't you be kind of prepared? Shouldn't you know yourself a little bit before you start going down those really deep roads?
Well, it's essential, but not everybody will choose that path of self-knowledge. But if you really want to be a philosopher or a mystic in the true sense of the word, or a psychologist, that's what's required.
Yeah, when I was, just to give my audience an idea of what our guest here, when I was 1 year old, you wrote the book Psi Development Systems, and this is an analysis of psi phenomena, evidence of the roots of shamanism, ceremonial magic, Buddhism, Judaism. When you looked at this, practices of Scientology, when you looked at these things, did you see any truth, or were you trying to see where the fraudulent side of this is and the truth side of it is?
Yeah, that book, the Psi Development Systems, is actually based on my doctoral dissertation at Berkeley, so it was my second book. And I looked at what are the different ways that people have learned how to cultivate psychic abilities. And I looked at the ancient traditions, shamanism and yoga and other kinds of spiritual practices that are very ancient. I looked at many modern popular approaches, Scientology and Silva mind control, and a group called the Berkeley Psychic Institute, and many different psychic teachers that were around, and even training remote viewing, which was just getting off the ground then. And then I looked at all the experimental data that we had based on meditation, hypnosis, relaxation techniques, giving people feedback. And I tried to analyze as best I could how, given all of this knowledge, if you wanted to design an ESP training program today, how would you do it? And so I sort of laid all of that out in this dissertation.
Gotcha. Okay. And so to you, does it matter if somebody, do you think it matters, say somebody uses an old system, like say somebody uses an ancient system to do it, or somebody uses a new system, like something that is just developed. If it gets you to the same place, the way I look at it is what floats your boat, right? But do you feel like we should
floats your boat is a good way to put it. And
Yeah.
who knows if two different people ever get to the same place. I think everybody is quite unique in that regard. But it's very hard to compare. Do you think who was more evolved, Jesus or Buddha?
Right,
I don't think it's a question that even makes much sense. Frankly.
It didn't make sense to me when somebody told me about it. They said, "Well, you're drawn to like ritual magic," and I said, "Yeah, I like it because I know myself. I know that if I create certain scenarios around me, that it triggers my subconscious, right? And it triggers my subconscious, and I'm programming it the way I want to because I understand the system." He said, "Well." I had a guest tell me, well, you don't even have to do that. You can do this thing over here, and this is different, right? This doesn't matter anymore. We need to evolve past it. And I'm thinking, well, some of these systems that people have used, whether it's religion or mystery schools, whatever you use to get to know yourself better or your higher self or whatever it is you want to call it, are still very valid today. And if you use a new system, it didn't matter to me either, right? But that's what I was being told. That's why I was kind of confirming that with you.
Well, it would be great if we learned more about which kinds of systems of spiritual growth work for which type of personality. We know quite a bit about different personality types, and we know, I think, quite a bit about different systems of spiritual psychic growth and mystical development, but what I don't think we know is what works best for which kind of person.
Yeah, right. Because you do a lot of, I know I've got a listener in the audience, Craven, does pretty much mainly dream work from what I'm understanding. And that seems to work very well with him as well, and it sounds like with you too. And even Carl Jung I think they've got a Jung tarot deck, but you could do all this work just based on Carl Jung's teachings, or you could go and do, I guess, yoga. To me, it doesn't matter. I just don't believe in throwing anything out.
Yeah. People go through different phases in their life. Even Jung himself did. If you read his Red Book, he went through a very intense phase of practicing active imagination on himself, and that turned out to be the basis of most of his psychological systems that developed later on. But he didn't keep doing that his whole life. After a number of years, he moved on and began looking at other things.
Right. Yeah, that's right. He definitely did. And even in that system, there are a lot of systems that are that way. I know I've got to take a break because I went over here just a couple of minutes. We will get to some of these questions. I've got 4 or 5 lined up here, trying to just get as much as I possibly can with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. We'll be right back. You guys don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on The Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
This is Stephen Campion, and you are listening to The Fringe. The Fringe FM.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Occult Arcana is a balanced and objective guide to those subjects considered a part of the nature of light and darkness. Addressed in this text is a compilation of material that will provide new perspectives and awaken latent abilities that we all possess. The content herein shall provide magical sustenance for adept and novice alike, and will help strengthen the cornerstone of mystic understanding and alchemical transmutation. If you are interested in this modern grimoire, you can find detailed information and ways to order by visiting www.thesecretteachings.info. Although esoteric and occult studies remain vast, they are rooted within a universal philosophy that is difficult, if not impossible by finite terms, to explain in words. Language places restriction and erects barriers to understandings. By this it is to be understood that there are some things man should consider far too sacred to profane with definition. For these concepts and the manner by which we live our lives, we shall take a note from the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Quote, "Silence is better than unmeaning words." End quote. To get your autographed copy of Occult Arcana today, simply visit www.thesecretteachings.info or email The Secret Teachings at rdgable@yahoo.com.
Greetings, galactic community. This is Suzanne Ross, host of Psi Spy Radio, every Wednesday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific. Join me for this brand new show featuring a revolutionary new genre, Psi Spy, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. Together, scientific discovery and spiritual revelation reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Tune in to Psi Spy Radio every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific and discover the truth for yourself at thefringe.fm.
Ever seen an extraterrestrial? It can be hard to believe they exist unless you've seen one for yourself. What if I told you I've seen them my whole life, but have never had a witness who shared the encounter with me? Now, what if I told you I saw 4 of them, 2 with blue skin, and there are over 20 witnesses to this CE5 event? My new book, The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, documents actual accounts from real witnesses, many of which have gone on record to attest to this otherworldly reality. Be a part of the quantum paradigm shift that is taking place right now. Go to johnpolkmedia.com to get your copy of The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, on sale right now at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com.
You know, food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply, which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Magic, the occult, history, health, news. These are just a few subjects discussed on my radio broadcast, The Secret Teachings. I offer unique and objective perspectives on new and old subjects alike, while welcoming guests and presenting my own research with no filter. Visit my website for more information and to subscribe to my archive at www.thesecretteachings.info. And find me on The Fringe FM live Monday through Friday, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove is our guest tonight, and it is a real treat for me, and I can tell some of you as well, too, by your questions and your comments, to have a broadcaster on the program that has been doing it much longer than me. I've only been doing this for just a couple of years, and you were doing this before I was born, and anytime I have somebody on the show that's like that, I get a bit nervous, and I got to ask the deeper questions. And so my question to you, Dr. Mishlove, and I understand that, you've written a few books. They're great books. You've talked to so many people. You don't have all the answers, but you've got some experiences, and you've talked to everybody in this field, it seems like. I think one of the biggest things that I'm noticing is we don't talk about love enough. I feel like sometimes we get involved with the mysticism aspect, the fascinating aspect of things sometimes, and consciousness and all of that. And I'm talking about myself too, because I give into that, and I forget that we don't talk about love enough. And I really feel like love is the answer to a lot of things, but sometimes it gets real hard to do that if you are not aware, like if you're unconscious about things, if you don't know what the unconscious even is. And this is why I feel like it's the most important thing to do things like shadow work, the scary stuff. And I was mentioning to you during break, just asking for a little bit of advice, the reason you do dream work. And I said, well, I would love to do dream work as a system, but I have dreams that are quite frankly sometimes just downright terrifying. And I know I've got to face them. I know they're there for a reason, but it's hard. I'm not saying facing your shadow is easy, but what would you do in a scenario like that? Let's say if you had a dream that kept reoccurring and it was terrifying. I'm talking about terrifying. You journal it, but you know it's something you got to face. I have a hard time with it, to be honest with you. It's one of the hardest things I have. I want to get away from it. I don't want to deal with it. I want to wake up. I can even feel my eyes shaking sometimes when I try to wake up. How would you deal with that?
Well, I think you have to trust yourself. And if you feel like you're not yet ready to face whatever it is, then be patient. It's not as if you got to do everything right away. Sooner or later, the day will come when you're ready to face it. And in the meantime, you're probably quite capable of having a pretty good life in any case.
Yeah, so don't try to force the situation.
That's what I would say, because there are probably plenty of things that you are ready to face. And you can work on those.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I'm kind of expressing this is why Dan Lopez said in the Fringe FM chat, this is why it's called work. Yeah, it ain't easy. And I feel like that we do things based on feeling because we want to feel good, right? We want to be in a positive environment. We want to feel good. We want to do good things and be around what feels good. And then I look at it seems like every aspect of things has a negative side to it as well. Because if you look at things like, I don't know, addiction, right? Which is, you said it's an epidemic, and it really is. And I've had my own experiences with it, that it's running rampant. And it's not just us. It's a lot of people that don't want to deal with that shadow side of themselves. And it's a big one. It's a hard one. But it's the pharmaceutical companies too.
And, in the 12-step programs, they often say a person isn't going to start working on themselves until they hit bottom.
Yeah.
You have to reach a point of desperation before you're strong enough or desperate enough to want to confront those parts of yourself. One of my maxims has sort of been that, we have no choice. We're going to grow. We're going to learn. The only choice we have is, are we going to do it joyously or are we going to do it kicking and screaming? Because usually I think we have an opportunity to do things in a way that is relatively painless, that's even joyful. But if we don't, if we're too afraid to accept the joyful opportunities that are presented to us, it may well be the case that we're going to have to do it kicking and screaming anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to make it a negative experience just because you're in a negative experience, Try to make the best of it. I get what you're saying. It's I just feel like we run from that too easily sometimes, and I mean myself too, because now I'm stuck in a dream world where I'm having to deal with a terrifying situation that I'm not ready to deal with yet because I run away, right? I run away to a better place, to something that just feels good. And that's like, that's like what Dan said. That's what it's called. That's why it's called work. But that is a very good point, what you're saying about, just because you're in a negative situation doesn't mean that you have to make it harder on yourself. Right. That's pretty special.
If you keep yourself alert for, positive, joyful ways in which you can grow and change, you're likely to avoid some of the negative consequences of failing to grow and change when you need to. And one simple little thing is just try to do things in different ways each time. Like get out of your bed on the other side of the bed than the one you normally get on, or brush your teeth with the other hand that you don't normally use. Little things like that can really open the mind up.
Yeah, I had a really good friend of mine. I said, look, I want to lose weight, and they said, well, try eating with your left hand, see if that works. All right. You don't think about little stuff like that, but that does work. It's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Breaking some of your traditional habits, for example, it gives you a new sense of mental freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's cool. We just need to be aware of it and willing. It's like when I was watching Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon, you see him in the Hall of Mirrors as he's looking through the mirrors. And when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, that's cool. It's Bruce Lee. But now when I get older, I see all of the symbolism in Hollywood and movies and comic books, and I become more aware of the archetypes that are in everything. And people, I think we try to build conspiracies around that or say that there's something communicating with us. But I think that just there is a narrative that is constantly running all the time when it comes to archetypal things. Would you agree?
Well, I think most of us are caught up in one archetype or another, even if it's just being human or being a male or being a female. We have certain expectations regarding who we are that are not fully conscious, and we act out our lives based on those unconscious factors that are pushing us in different directions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was, there's this movie that everybody likes, and I was talking to a friend of mine and saying, I wonder why everybody likes that movie, and it's called The Fifth Element. And when I bring it up, people go, oh, I love that movie. It's got Bruce Willis and what's her name?
Yes, I know the movie, sure. Yeah, the opera singer.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie, right? And everybody just likes it. It's in everybody's top 5. And I look at that movie and I see, the priest class of the mystery schools. I see Corbin, which I named my son Corbin, by the way, based off of that movie, but Corbin and trying to find his way through this crazy world, and he meets the ultimate being, which is like, so you got male and female energy there. And then they go to this temple and they got to, put the elements where they are, put them where they belong, activate the elements. And then the next thing you know, they make this gigantic weapon, and this weapon goes up in space, and it's taking out this big black ball of mind control or whatever that thing is. And all they had to do was round out those elements and love each other. It was that simple, or he just had to surrender to it. Right?
Well, you started talking about love earlier.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring up one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to love is a person I've already mentioned, Pitaram Sorokin, the sociologist. He actually wrote a book called The Ways and Power of Love, and he looked at all of human history for examples of love. And I thought one of his best examples was the Emperor Ashoka, who was a conquering emperor on the Indian subcontinent. He conquered nearly all of it, and then he got converted to Buddhism. And it's I think one of the rare examples in history, maybe the only example, of where a conquering emperor said to his armies, go home now. It's time, instead of, killing people, I want you to raise your crops. And he just completely changed as a result of his encounter with Buddhism. And I think that's a wonderful example. Or Gandhi, what he did, once again, on the Indian subcontinent, freeing it from a couple of centuries of British colonial rule and basically doing it through nonviolent methods.
Yeah. That's we could do that easily if we just made the choice. Right. That's all we'd have to do. Just make that simple choice.
Well, and it requires a certain coherence of human consciousness, for people to all be on the same page with regard to that. It takes, the right historical, social, political conditions, but these things can and do happen. And there are many examples where people showed immense love of a kind called agape, a sort of larger kind of love, not, sexual love, but love for humanity.
Yeah. That's that goes back to the philosophies. There's different kinds of love. Yeah, I've read that. I forgot that Amalia came on here and talked about that, but I forgot the name of all of them. Yeah, see, you do know your stuff a little bit, right? Yeah, you I mean, some people read books and you talk to people, and I know you read books and write books too, but you talk to a lot of people.
I do. Mm-hmm.
When it comes to things like magic and all of these systems, I have had a friend of mine come on the program. He's just a buddy, just another podcaster, and he brought this to my attention. He said, I think a lot of times all of these systems we go through, and it goes back to what you were speaking about, like shadow stuff. All of these things that we're trying to do is we're just trying to deal with our own shame. That whole Genesis story, like we're just trying to deal with how bad we judge ourselves about certain things in our childhood programming. And even some people that have, hate to say it, worse childhoods, but there's opposites to that. It all gets transmuted. It all turns into love eventually, I think.
For many years, I was a trainer for a seminar company called Omega Seminars. I don't even think it exists anymore, but the focus of it was self-esteem. And we used to teach people what we call the 3 magic words, which is I love myself, and especially useful for school children. Where, a lot of young kids have a hard time loving themselves, really. A lot of kids, if you ask them, they'd say, I hate myself.
Wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, people's self-hatred is a huge problem in our culture. It's totally unnecessary problem. I think if people realized, what beautiful spiritual beings virtually everybody is, there's no reason not to love yourself. You don't have to love all your behavior. You don't have to love your bad habits, but yourself is like your psyche, your spirit, your soul. I have to call it a kind of a divine gift. We all have the gift of consciousness.
Yeah, and it does speak to us sometimes, and it tells us to do that, to love ourselves first. That is so hard.
Which isn't the same as having a fat ego.
Yeah,
to be ego inflated is not at all the same as authentic self-love, but I don't think you can really love another person until you can love yourself. And your dream that you're having a hard time confronting is probably all about some part of yourself that you haven't found a way to love yet, that frightens you.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I get that. There is a thing where people talk about transmuting the ego or getting rid of the ego. And I read a lot of stuff about that, and I think, well, that ego never really goes away, or does it, right? Does it go away? Can we really just banish the thing, or do we just know how to tame it?
You wouldn't want to banish how are you going to tie your shoes in the morning right, if you don't have an ego? An ego is necessary, but what you don't want is an inflated ego. You don't want your ego to get in the way.
Yeah.
There is a role and a place for the ego. My mentor, Arthur Young, the man I mentioned earlier who invented the Bell helicopter, used to say this. He said, a lot of spiritual traditions talk about sacrificing your ego on the altar of spirituality. He said, but there's no point in sacrificing your ego until you've developed an ego worthy of being sacrificed.
Yeah.
And for him, that meant literally, developing, building, inventing the first commercially licensed helicopter, the Bell helicopter, Model 47. That was a spiritual quest for him because he felt that he wasn't worthy of being on a spiritual quest until he could demonstrate some mastery of the physical world. And for him, that meant, inventing something that had never been invented before.
Yeah, I've thought about doing that too, like writing a book. Maybe I could write a book. Maybe we could transmute a lot of things if we take on a practice and do those types of things. And I've noticed when I've studied big-time masters, say like Daskalos. Are you aware of who Daskalos is, or Dr. Stylianos Ateschlis?
No.
Well, he was one of the masters from the island of Cyprus that people talk about quite a bit when it comes to esoteric Christianity, that he could heal people and, he could actually...
Yeah, I've heard of him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he, when I read his books, the esoteric practices and the esoteric teachings, he really did make things simple, but he seemed to always be doing something, whether it was painting or building something or whatever. And it wasn't just him sitting there healing people all the time and teaching all the time. It was just, he put his energy and life into creating things and building things. And when people came along, he'd sit down with them and teach them some things. And I think that's important to do that. And I really do.
One of my role models is Rudolf Steiner. I'm very fond of him as a mystical teacher, and he showed enormous talent in many areas, everything from architecture to sculpture and painting and dance and movement and poetry and philosophy and medicine and education and agriculture. He was almost like the Nietzschean Superman. In fact, his followers very specifically refer to him in that way.
Yeah. Steiner, I talked to Alana Freeland. She said she'd come back on the show soon, and she wanted to talk about the eighth sphere. And I was like, okay, well, I'll look into that. I'll look into Steiner a little bit more. And it's funny, when I started looking into them a little bit more, I like the Rosicrucian school. That's what I'm drawn to, just intellectually. That's what I'm drawn to. Mm-hmm. And I found that goes way, way back, and even to Steiner. And I'm thinking, wow, this stuff is a lot deeper than I thought. It's much deeper. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around this idea of, I guess, animism, or that everything is conscious. And I get that, but it's very hard for me to contemplate. So I've actually done this. I've sat down in front of a rock and just meditated on it. And I just don't see how that could have consciousness, even though relatively it's got particles and, but how is it alive like I'm alive? It doesn't feel the same.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rock, I interviewed my friend Christian DeQuincy about consciousness in this regard, and he said that he was what they call a panpsychist. A panpsychist is a person who believes that consciousness permeates everything. But he said you have to distinguish between what he called wholes and parts. Like a flower might be a whole thing, but a rock, depending on the kind of rock it was and how it was formed, it might be an aggregate rather than just one thing.
I got what you're saying. We perceive it as one thing.
Yeah, I mean, everything can be made out of consciousness or experience or mental stuff. I think everything can be made out of mental stuff without being conscious in and of itself. Or one of my viewers recently said we have to distinguish between consciousness and sentience. Just because something is composed of mental stuff like experience or consciousness doesn't mean that it is also sentient.
Okay. Now you got me. You hooked my brain with that one. Okay, so sentient is just... Okay, isn't sentient just mean alive? Or does it
means having experience. It means if you're sentient, it means that it's there's an experience of what it's like to be you.
Okay.
Whereas very likely with a rock, there's no experience at all of what it's like to be a rock, or the experience is so very, very different from human consciousness that it's hard to understand. I know I go in and out of different spaces when it comes to this sort of thing. There are times when I feel like a mountain is completely conscious and I'm communing with it, but that could be my own inner mental state and have nothing to do with the mountain for all I know.
Right, but and wasn't that...
On the other hand, the idea that everything is conscious, I don't have a problem with that. It just seems natural to me that the whole universe is like conscious.
Yeah. Wasn't that Rudolf Steiner's, a part of his, I don't know if it was him or Max Heindel, a part of his teachings to where everything there was levels of consciousness, like there was the mineral kingdom, and then you would work your way, like everything was in a state of development, and then you work your way to the animal kingdom, and then human.
Yeah.
Was that Steiner's work?
Well, these ideas go back way before Steiner.
Okay.
They go back centuries. What you're talking about is sometimes referred to as the great chain of being, the idea that you have minerals and then plants and then animals and then humans and then maybe devas or saints or highly evolved Mahatmas and then deities and then absolute oneness. And that there's a hierarchy, a spiritual hierarchy, and that it's like the Great White Brotherhood. They're there to uplift us, or something along those lines. But there's an equal and opposite point of view, which is that there is no hierarchy at all. Everything is sort of on the same level, that we're all part of one being. So you can't say any one part of it is better than any other part, like, which is better, your fingers or your toes or something. Your fingers aren't better than your toes just because they're higher up. They may be more useful, but you may discover that your toes are also extremely important and they're all part of you.
Right. Yeah.
Like the jellyfish I was referring to earlier, for all I know, that, jellyfish could be highly evolved in ways that I can't begin to conceive of.
I really find this fascinating that you have some of the same thoughts that I do, a lot of the same thoughts that I do. And you've taught me quite a bit here on the show too, but you have a lot of the same thoughts I do. And you've talked to so many people, but I feel like when it comes to what your work and your energy is, I get really excited when I watch your show and I see that you're talking to somebody that has developed a new way of looking at things or a new system of development when it comes to consciousness exploration. That really excites you because it makes you feel like, okay, we're moving in a good direction here, and that's all that matters. We're actually getting better at this.
Well, it's my goal, I guess, is to put as much of that material out into the world as I can. I think it does some good.
Yeah, it does do a lot of good. It does do a lot of good. And listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I think it's been a real pleasure having you on the broadcast. I think it is really cool what you're doing, and I hope that you never ever stop for the sake of all of us,
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to go check out the website, if you go to newthinkingaloud.com, that takes you straight to the YouTube channel, and you still have the Thinking Aloud too, or do you even use that website still?
Well, yes, there is the original Thinking Aloud program. We were out on public television from 1986 to 2002. And then the YouTube channel, I started that in 2015, and that's New Thinking Aloud. It's ALLOWED, incidentally.
Fantastic, and I really do appreciate your time. It's been an honor actually to talk to you, a fellow broadcaster that's been doing it since before I was born. This is like the first time I've gotten to do this. I've done 370 something episodes. First one I've been able to talk to somebody in my field that's been doing it way before, and we all really appreciate what you're doing, and we'll all keep following you as well. And thank you so much for coming on.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, guys, we'll be right back with more Lighting the Void coming up. That was Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. Go check out the websites that we just mentioned, New Thinking Aloud and thinkingaloud.com. We'll be right back.
Qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states. Cannasense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. Cannasense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational personal perceptions and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
You are listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's FRINGE at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com.
So, have you heard of heavy metals? I'm not talking about the heavy metals in the junkyard. I'm talking about the heavy metals that build up in your body. Heavy metals in your body can make you feel sluggish, fatigued, and just plain off. Why not try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com? Cleansing your body and making you feel great. No, not cleansing the outside of your body, but cleansing the inside of your body of intruders that sneak their way into you and set up an intruder camp. Life Change Tea helps remove unwanted intruder camps. Brew it, steep it, and drink in the results. Tastes great, so you can create a new health habit. Our tea loves to help people. It just needs the chance. So order yours today by logging on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Our Life Change Super Strength Tea is waiting. This could be a beautiful relationship. Take charge of your health. Order at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
That is definitely the record for the longest Bundy music. We might as well finish the song. We got 30 seconds left. The Reverend Dan Lopez is here with me in the virtual shack. Man, I got to tell you, dude, I was wrecked talking to that guy. That dude's like a hero to me. It was rough, honestly.
Why were you wrecked?
I don't know. I could talk to, I don't know, Clint Eastwood. You know, it seems like and be okay sometimes, and then there's certain people that I talk to, man, that I just feel like are
intimidated.
Not intimidated. No. It ain't like that. It's like,
oh, okay.
I've looked up to the guy for so long. I kind of just was like, I got to ask him every deep question in the world, you know?
Yeah, you got to go for it.
You know, like, why not? Right. And
yeah, exactly.
And, you know, he was really cool to me, like during the break and stuff. He's like, man, you're doing good work. And you can tell when somebody's really aware, too, of what's going on. He could tell I was messed up a little, you know. But I think what gets me about all this is I dropped a link into the show there, you know, into the Fringe FM chat that had all the different categories and all the people that he had talked to for years and years. And your mic sounds fantastic, by the way, brother. But he still has a lot of the same questions. I know that, he knows quite a bit more. It's hard to recall everything, but it seems like, I wonder sometimes, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but is that really all this is about, doing this is about, broadcasting this stuff? I know it's fun and it raises awareness, but is that it? You know, is that it?
Oh no, God, Joe, there's more to life than just, consciousness. There's relationships. What are you saying then?
The show.
Maybe I'm not following you.
Just the show, that's all. I know there's more to life.
Is that all there is to it?
Yeah, man. It's kind of like, you ever seen that show Talk Radio where that dude loses it at the end, you know? And it's a funny show. Oliver Stone made the movie. It's called Talk Radio. It's like one of my favorite movies. And this talk radio guy, right? And he's one of those shock jock, kind of like Alex Exum, right? He just likes to talk about controversial subjects, stir people up, and hang up on them, you know. And he's very intense about things, and he's very dramatic sometimes about things. Kind of funny sometimes. But anyways, at the end of the movie, I don't care if I'm spoiling this movie. This movie was made back in the 80s. So at the end of the movie, he just flips out. He has like a breakdown on his whole audience, you know. And it wasn't the breakdown that got me, is what triggered the breakdown. A caller called into the show, and he said, who's calling? And it's just this lady that said, well, I love your show. And he goes, why? Right? And she goes, well, I don't know. I like all the things you say, and I like to hear your voice. And he's like, you like to hear my voice? Well, what else do you like about the show? And she goes, well, I don't know, you know? And he's like, what do you mean you don't know? And he just he flips out because he realizes he's not getting through to some people, you know? And I think I started realizing that, I'm not doing this. I do this show for a lot of internal reasons, for my own, kind of like Darren was saying when he was on last Friday, for my own exploration as well, and to talk about things, to get things off my chest and to relate to people. But I think sometimes we think things have to have a higher meaning or a higher purpose all the time, and sometimes maybe they don't. Maybe they just have to be an experience, and that's it. They don't always have to have some type of divine higher purpose.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. From what I understand is, if you do a show, and not to just a tangent off for a second, I kind of get where you were talking about a while back, like everybody should have their own podcast. I finally got it. It was probably because I was watching the Gary Vee videos, but I finally got what you meant. But as far as this is concerned, that's what it's all about. It's about your personal interests. So if your personal interests are varied, you go about them. If you have a love and a passion for what you're interested in, then that's what you do. And that comes out in every show, and your best shows are usually the ones where you're most intense about, the most nervous about, because you don't know if people are going to resonate with it or not. Or you're not sure, right?
Yeah.
But you feel it, and you like you were saying earlier, you kind of felt weird, and it wasn't bad weird. It's just weird, So you go on it and you do it, and you pray people, people get it, and for the most part, people who are on the same vibe, will get it, and those who won't, and that's okay.
That's it, right? And
that's it.
Thank you. Good night. That's
exactly.
It's kind of like when I look at the Johnny Carson show. I binged on him one day, man, just watching old. Everybody loved Johnny Carson, right? Why? Why did they love that guy? Well, he wasn't a man of many words. He just had a lot of guests on, but he it's not like he asked super awesome questions. It was just something about just being there. Just being there.
Well,
willing to talk
and he let
about
the
it.
hosts.
Yeah.
Right. He guided the hosts and he guided the hosts into questions that, he was curious about. And he let the host, take off. I mean, he let the guest take off,
yeah.
and yeah. So, and then that was the show, really. And people loved it. People ate it up. And he was a comedian, so he was able to, keep the candor light. So it was, pretty cool.
You know what? I tell you what it is for me, honestly. If I made this about consciousness and all this stuff that we talk about, if I made it some type of higher divine purpose, I would be constantly disappointed, honestly. Honestly, I mean, we could talk about these things all till the cows come home, and it's fun. It's fun to explore and talk about our stories and experiences. But the thing that really keeps me going is, and I'll give you an example, and I really hope I don't embarrass her, but I have to tell her how much it does for me. And I don't want to have a baby boy moment here on the air, but it's like...
Wouldn't be your first one.
Yeah, no, I've had them a couple times on here. I got to take a break, but Lily finally got through that one night. Somebody's been listening forever, and...
Yeah.
It wasn't just the fact that she got through. It was how happy and giddy she was when she did get through.
She's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, I'm just, it's not me. It's the community. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, what did he say in the Doors movie? It's the sacrament, right? It's the get together. It's the sacred thing where everybody goes that night. She's already being like, shh, be quiet. She's so cute. Yeah.
She's awesome.
But that's what it was. And every time I get a little discouraged, I'm like, where's this thing going? What's my next question? Those things happen, and it keeps you going. And you did this for quite some time, and I'm assuming you're thinking about picking it back up. I don't know. Don't want to pressure you. It's all you, man. But what I will say is that you did enough shows that you developed kind of like an egregore of spiritual warrior today. And anybody that wants to, that's going through anything in their life, like spiritually, or if you're going through a rough time, I promise you, you can grab the archives if you can get them. The Spiritual Warrior Today, they're there, and just start listening to that show, and it'll make you feel better. That's the one thing. I'm just saying that's the one thing that some shows are like, man, this is boring, right? And then other shows you just click with, and you get to where you just want to keep listening. And you had that, man. You did that because you talked about all of the hardcore stuff, and you had a way of complaining about it that was hilarious to me, like how frustrated. Well, your frustrations get are like other. I related to them, and I feel like when I complain about things, that it's like, oh, here he goes, he's on a rant again. Good night, you know. But then I get a message of like, dude, you got to do more rants. I'm like, what? I mean, do you want to hear me complain? Is that what you want? You want me to start like abusing you on the air? That's not what I want to do. Or abusing the situation. I don't know.
No. That's not what they're looking for, but they're wanting you to commiserate. And it's, of course, you know, you do that because there's a lot of things that, you know, we have frustrations in life, and it's hilarious, you know, and sometimes you just got to blow off the steam, and everybody who's listening is like, oh, yeah, totally. So, you know, it's not that they want to hear it all the time. It's just that every once in a while, it's like, you know, somebody's going through something, you know, and they have it in them to blow out, but they can't put it into words. And then all of a sudden you come out and you put everything out into words that they were thinking of to begin with. So you become their hero, you know, and I don't mean that in an ego inflating way. I just mean that, you know,
it's almost like you're giving them permission to feel that.
Oh yeah. And they're like, preach it, brother.
Yeah. And it is. And a funny thing, my son showed me something that was hilarious. He watches these gamers and YouTube people, right? And he shows me this guy. I forget the guy's name. And people were there were so many people listening and watching this guy, and they're throwing money at him. He's just hand over fist. And you know what he does? Is he sits there and verbally abuses people. People pay him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Some comedians were like that.
Hell, I mean, it's like, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. But the guy really does cut deep. Like, he gets deep on folks, you know. I ain't talking about Sam Kinison stuff. He goes for the throat. And then,
yeah, there was a trick to that, I heard. Not to cut you off, but there is a trick to that. The trick is that never to go off on somebody you hate.
Ah. Yeah, I can see that. Because
yeah, and then it really comes out. It comes across, you know, and it goes really dark. And that's not the place you want to go when you're trying to keep a light show, you know. So it's almost, instead of, you know, becoming a rant, it becomes like a bitch fest.
Yeah.
So,
well, I got a little bit of a bitch fest.
Or mean-spirited. You know what I mean? And so that's a turn off for people. You know, like if you're blowing off steam, that's one thing. But if you're like seriously ripping because you hate, that kind of that rubs hairs the wrong way, and that's, you know, people get that, and they're like, I just left the work and I left all of this stuff behind. I don't need to turn into this. So they're like, click, you know.
I always took the mentality that John Anthony West told me. You know how brutal he would get about academia sometimes, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I always took that approach in life in general. I took that philosophy as this, you know, you're only responsible for the way you feel. Others cannot make you feel a certain way. Now, I used to really, like, that was my thing, you know. I'm going to tell you this, and then if you take it that way, then you take it that way. And that's usually based on your own BS and your own garbage and whatever you got going on in your head. Well, you start to realize,
right.
Yeah, that might be true, but also that you're being a little bit insensitive. You know, like you're not really thinking straight. You're not thinking about cause and effect. You just want to make sure you get your message across, and it doesn't really matter what they say. And so when I get to ranting on here, sometimes I feel like I'm doing that, and I've got one hell of a rant that I would like, I would like to get out. I really do, because it drives me up the wall, and I don't want to abuse.
Well, why don't we
audience.
do that right after we go to break?
I really want to get it out, though, but maybe I should calm down. I see what you're doing. You're a good friend, Dan. You know that? I got to talk to you first before you do this. Before you get it back on here, you're going to do something stupid again.
No. Well,
maybe, right?
But that wasn't the first thing on my head, though. Got to pay the bills first.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be right back. A little bit more Bundy. How about that? We'll play the long song a little bit.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Right, me old Chinas. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Lighting the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of The Fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Every Saturday at midnight here on the Fringe FM, you can join me, Stephen Campion, the host of the Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of the Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited. Join us on.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
A brand new internet television network is rocking the airwaves with a whole new genre, sci-fi, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. Tune in to sci-spy.tv, SCISPI.TV. Discover progressive news shows hosted by best-selling authors, speakers, and experts in many fields. Right now, for only $5.55 a month, you will have access to over 20 brand new, never-before-seen shows with fascinating content and brand new revelations. Subscribe today to sci-spy.tv. That's SCISPI.TV.
Hey, Google. I would like to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. But I don't have time to read or go to school because I work all the time. What do you recommend?
Try listening to Lighting the Void. It's the best way to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. Besides, I happen to think Joe Roop is the most handsome voice in radio. Listen Monday through Friday 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific time on the Fringe FM. Plus, you will hear a bonus feature called The Stranger Than Fiction News. Reported by Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer. With all this information in one location, you are guaranteed to be more attractive to others in your social circle because you'll beam with intellectual wisdom.
I think I'll try that.
This is Jason Lindgren from Crow 777 Radio, and you can hear us every 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM.
All the stuff that I was supposed to talk about when we came back, I just let it go during the break with Dan. You know, so we just let it go. Good night. Man. So now we don't have to talk. Show's over, right? No. Here's what I want to say, and I want to. Dan, just jump on me if you feel like I'm about to say something stupid, please. For the love of God, if
Joe.
So he's already doing it before I even open my mouth. That says a lot about me. Why don't you just stop right now? How about that? No, but it's one of those deals where you guys know I love all of you as listeners. I truly do.
Except for that guy over there.
Except for him. No, yeah, no, but you guys, and I know you don't listen live all the time. I know you catch the shows later. Some of you. I had a guy message me last night and did it in the most polite way. And it was the most respectful way in an email, and even donated, I think, because he was worried about how I was going to take it, which you didn't have to do that. The way you did the email is respectful. So sometimes I get behind and I tell you guys the archives come out a day or two later because I got other work on the station. And this guy was used to the archives coming out every single morning, you know, and that I get on rolls like that sometimes I don't. And he listens to the show in the office, and I screwed up his routine. Right now, I understand that. I feel like I let the guy down. That makes sense to me. And his email back to me was very respectful, man. It was just, look, you know, I like listening to your show at a certain time of day at work, and I got used to you having it up the next morning, and it's gone now. So you all right? And then donated to me. He didn't have to do that, but that was polite. Here's where I got an issue with some of you that I love, and I'm saying this because I love you.
Out of love.
I've got 5 or 6 close friends that I make sure that I respond to on here, maybe 7, 8, if I really think about it. And
I'm not one of them.
Yes, you are. And when they message me, I know it's important to respond to people when they message you, because all kinds of stuff goes through your head when you don't get an answer back from somebody.
He's ghosting me. He's ghosting me, or he don't care, or he's mad, or this or that, right? So all kinds of stuff go through your head, and I get it. I do.
But it's got to a point to where when the people that I don't get back to immediately, not only don't wait, they can't even wait for a 24-hour period to go by, and they they stomp their feet or whatever, you know. Well, I guess you hate me.
It's worse than that.
Or I guess not, you know, or whatever. And this has been going on for a long time. This just didn't start happening. And
extremist.
It has compiled to, if you're having a knee-jerk reaction, it's one thing to have it in an argument and not be aware of both parties or you're unconscious. But if you're having knee-jerk reactions in chat rooms where you actually have time to think about it before you respond, like, realize all the stuff that I'm doing is all I'm saying, and that I will get back to you. And sometimes I miss your messages. Sometimes I miss your emails, and I never respond. And then you have to keep trying to just keep sending me or poking it, you know, me and saying, hey, and I'll get to you. And now I'm not saying this because it's just happened a few times. It is compiled to the point to where I just I'm done with it. I'm not going to put it up with temper tantrums, not even from my listeners, as much as I love you. It's stressing me out too much.
I think that there's just an audience out there who don't understand that you do wear multiple hats, and it's not just one show that you're handling. You're handling a network of shows, and you actually have your hands in producing. And what people don't understand with producing is a lot more than just, you know, being there for the show. You know, there's a lot involved in producing. There's there's pre and post production and stuff like that goes on that really is time consuming, you know, as far as getting everything together, make sure that the host is ready, that the guests are ready, that the recording is edited and then distributed, you know, and the website is updated and you know, and name it. Where, you know, a producer is on top of it, you know, you got to keep the engine going, you know, and it pretty much you're one gun, you know, trying to handle all of these things. You're almost like my sister. I used to call her the person who likes to juggle a lot of plates. You know, ever see somebody spinning their plates? Yeah, you just got to keep them all spinning. You got to keep them all spinning. And when one breaks, you know, it's like you don't hear the end of it. So it's, you know, it's no slight on anybody. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, got to understand there's a lot going on. And so if it can't get to you, if it forgets to get to you and stuff like that, just say, hey, shoot him another one. In case you didn't see my other one, I just wanted to let you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, I know you're busy and stuff like that. And I'm not going to take it personal. I understand that, you know, you're one gun. You're trying to do the whole darn thing by yourself, and just wanted to give you a little insight or some whatever you wanted to share with Joe. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, understanding that, you know, this is a lot bigger than we all take it to be. Because if you looked at the website, the Fringe FM website, and you looked at all the hosts and the shows that are going on, mostly all of them, Joe has his hands in. You know, so it's not like, you know, everything is just going up automatically without his help or anything like that. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. At least not yet. We're working on it, though. We're trying to get to that point.
Yeah, we're constantly trying to automate things. Yeah. Yeah,
of course. But, you know, we're getting there. It's just a matter of time, you know.
Yeah, and, you know, Markham, he's one of my partners on the network, right? When he came into the fold, he was like, yeah, this is exciting. I'm going to be a part of the Fringe FM. As soon as he started having to deal with what I dealt with, he was like, Jesus, man, I'm out.
Yeah.
I got to take a nap. Like, I can't do it, you know? And I was thinking, it's okay, brother. You know, like, we got a mutual understanding about something else anyways. And he's like, I'm not, you know, Markham is not sensitive. Like, he is a nice guy, but he's got his boundaries, and they're very clear, right? And he's like, nope, done with that one, you know? And I would talk to him about these problems and stuff, you know, like, I got this problem, this issue with this person, and he'd be like, you know what? Don't deal with it. Get rid of them. I'm like, Markham, listen, brother, you know, we start dropping everybody. We ain't got nobody. So what I figured out what happened is I I figured, I was like this, okay, what I'll do with Markham is like, if you hear from Eric Markham, it's not good. That's his job now, you know? But then he didn't want that either, because he's so nice too. And so like, okay, I'll do it. And that's what it ends up happening is I'll do it. And I'm not complaining about all that stuff. I love doing what I do. Actually, it's a blessing. It's just, I want to get to the people that put the time and effort into what they're doing. Say, like Amanda and Dre and other people that are writing articles, trying to get those articles up on the Fringe FM. And I got 9 million messages from people stomping their feet. You know, guess you don't want to talk to me. I guess you're mad. And I can't psychologically handle that anymore. So I don't know what to do. I can't block it. What do I do, Dan? Help me here. You know?
Let them have their hissy fit. Keep going and do what you got to do. You know, when you get to them, you'll get to them. And let them know. This is what we're here saying this now so that they understand. You know, it's not like there's anything to be done. We're just trying to carry on business here.
Yeah.
You know? That's all. You know, it's being done now.
You know why Dan spoke for me? Like my spokesperson, Dan Lopez. He's not trying to be my spokesperson. He's just afraid of what I'm going to say. All right.
It's not just that. It's that I'm empathetic to what. No, yeah, well, there's that, but I'm empathetic to your situation because I've had 2 hosts that I had to take care of myself and just trying to juggle them and get their shows and everything like that and doing their banners and getting the post-production and the pre-production ready and making sure that I was there. I was there. I was doing that. I know exactly what you're going, a good portion of what you were going through because I wasn't at the level that you're at now. But yeah, absolutely. And time. I'd love to have time for everybody, but that's impossible.
Yeah, it is. And that's all I'm trying to say is like, I can't get to all of you and do it as fast as you need me to do things. I've literally got people here that have drove to the shack in Cane Creek, Arkansas to record voiceovers that I need to get done, you know, stuff like that. So whatever. I don't want to talk about how much work I got. You all know that stuff. But just give me a little time to respond. And if I don't respond, and if you're asking yourself, well, I just did that. Is this me? Probably. But here's the thing.
Chances are it's you.
It could be you, but it's probably you. But it's not just you. This has been going on with other people for over 6 months. I don't know when I really started getting frustrated with this. 6 months now, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
6 or 7 months. And then it just gets worse and worse. And I feel like I gotta make sure everybody's happy all the time, you know?
There's the problem.
And what I want to do in my life is make sure that the people that I care about the most are happy and my listeners are happy. And answering messages or Facebook messages or whatever. I've literally turned that thing off now. I've just turned it off. I don't know if I can do it anymore. Honestly, man, it's too much. And
just let it go with love.
You know what? Yeah. Right. Well, that probably work. Give it a little universe juice, like Lady Ann says. You said something a minute ago, a new word. I gotta use that word too. It was something about, it was a combination of words that was really cool about miserable company. What was the word you used? They're
commiserating.
Commiserating.
Yeah.
Let's stop commiserating together and let's be peaceful and happy and just be a little patient and I'll get to you. That's all. But I love you. That's all. I love you. Just give me a little time. Don't snap at me and throw a fit. I feel better.
Mom.
I feel better.
Good. That's what this was all about.
That's what it's all about. You know, somebody asked me, so, well, why don't you just hire one of those assistants or secretaries or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
No. I see, if I did that, then you got somebody from India or whatever responding to you. That's not even me. And that is, it just don't feel right. Maybe I should do that.
No. You know what you do? Get an intern.
An intern? Yeah.
Damn right. Well, sure.
Well, I already got Don's helping me. Patrick's helping me. I don't know. I got to start paying these people, you know, as much as they do. It's like, I can't believe you're doing this. Thank you. I'm very grateful to all of you. Well, they come from college to do an internet radio show, though.
Yeah, right. Well,
who knows, right? I can show them the official card. Look, it's KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We're part of the National Association of Digital Broadcasters, and we can syndicate terrestrially if you pick us up. So we're legit. You know, I need one of your interns. What would suck, though, is if they go and go to apply for a job, and it's like, yeah, I interned for the Fringe FM. They're like, yeah, well, that don't count. That's not a real terrestrial radio station. I don't want to do that to folks either. But I appreciate.
I don't think that's how that works, but okay.
I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I don't think you go from, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it. And you usually bounce. So if an intern comes in on a podcast network, like such as this, basically what they're doing is they're going to get as much information as they possibly can, grow themselves in the knowledge and the experience that they're going to get, and then they bounce to another one that's going to give them more, or give them what they're wanting, and have more room for them to expand, depending on the size and scope of the next position, and if they wind up interning more, they wind up interning more. It's not necessarily like this is a launch pad for you to get on WABC. That's not how it works. There's a lot of experience that goes into getting experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah. I don't worry about it.
Yeah, you do.
I don't. I really don't, man. And okay. I think it's important, to realize all of our roles. I got a role. You got a role. Markham's got a role. Markham has been going through a lot of stuff lately, and that's why when you're going through things, you just don't want to deal with people. I don't.
Or can't.
Let me tell you something. If I was going,
or you can't.
If I was going through what Markham was going through, he's had 2 cardiac events. He got laid off from a job, and then people did him dirty out there too, by the way. And he's going through a lot of stuff. You can't deal with things like that. You can't deal with people, and it's I've been there. Trust me. The thing, what I did when I got laid off from Verizon, though, is I just did this. I said, I'm tired of trying to please these people. A lot of times it takes time after you make a transition in your life. It takes time, man, but it's usually a good thing.
Either that or you pull a Heisenberg.
Mm-hmm. It's usually a good thing, too, though. If you're miserable in a situation and you've been there for a long time and people aren't treating you right, and you guys know Eric, he's a teddy bear until you piss him off. And I'm just saying, he wasn't getting treated right.
That's why
I try to tell him, I said, well, just get out of there, and he was worried about, with all the stuff that was going on with him, he was worried about us. So what does that say about him? And he didn't even have to be.
Right.
So we love you too, Markham. And if you do travel west, you better stop by the shack again, brother.
Yeah. You're 21 hours away, dude. I just looked at that because I had gone down to Oklahoma and to that fort down there, and I can't remember the name of the fort, but it was 21 hours away. And I went and I looked at the map and I looked down at yours, and I was like, damn. You're all the way down.
Yeah, I know. I'm a long ways away from everybody. He did make a trip out here, though, and we didn't really get to do what we wanted to do, but maybe next time we will. And I'm liable to disappear in a Fringe FM caravan if he gets one. That's what I want.
Yeah,
a Fringe
damn straight.
FM caravan.
Yeah, we got to get a Class C together.
Yeah, there you go. Get a Class C, just travel around. Where it stops, nobody knows. Oh, look, we got to get out of here, too.
Yeah, we do.
Your mic, whatever you did to your studio, sounds fantastic, brother. I don't know.
Awesome.
Maria Wheatley is coming on tomorrow night, and we're going to be discussing, she's an author, but we're going to be discussing sacred sites and dowsing, and she's researched a lot of things like esoteric design canons, prehistoric sites, druidic ceremonial enclosures, and even the Knights Templar. We're going to dig into that, and I hope we see you all back here tomorrow night. I really do love each and every one of you. Thank you all for your support, and thank you all for being patient with me on certain things. I love you all. Thank you, Dan, for coming on, brother.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
No, I got to say that please don't copy this, especially on YouTube, without written permission. Music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. I want to thank Pancho, Dan, Markham, Lady Ann, Amanda, Dennis, Jeremy Scott, Don. If I left you out, I'm sorry. If all of you guys that have been really helping. I love you. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.